Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 5. And today we're joined by the remarkable Simon and Lisa Thomas, who have spent the last 17 years travelling the world on two big BMWs whilst living in a Hillyberg tent. We thought now would be a good time to catch up with them because they're basically having a forced layover in the UK. And we talked to them about their travels and the photography school that they've recently set up called Living Lens. Noel manages to insult their packing skills, but I think we got away with it. Let's go. It is a fairly small world, isn't it, really?
Bloody incestuous. I was speaking to you the other day. So we gave a talk in Chester, and after we went to the pub, and then lots of questions and answers, and the guy sitting next to me said, so where do you live? I said, well, right now we're based North West Wales, and I explained that why we're in the UK and where our bikes are and why we're not on the road. He went, oh, bloody hell. He goes, isn't there that other weird bloke? He rides a bike. Oh, mad as a box of cats on the cocaine. What's his name? I said, what, you mean that Nick Sanders? He went, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at a deadpan. I went, you know, it's my brother-in-law. He went, he actually married my wife's sister.
That is quite funny in having the two different approaches to travelling around the world, that Nick set the world record and did it as fast as he could, whilst you probably set the record for going
the longest and slowest.
Have you, Clive, done your due diligence for tonight? Because when I started to do it, man, I just thought there's too much. There's too much to know here.
Too much stuff.
Yeah, before we go into it. So I kind of gave up.
Obviously, I'm the hard-working of the two of us, and I've got 2 pages of notes and questions.
Christ, that's intimidating.
Not really. Difficult thing is because obviously you've done so much stuff, so many interviews, videos, even there's lots of TV stuff on your YouTube as well, isn't there? BBC and Australia, and it's difficult trying to think of things to talk about that you haven't already said, because it must get really fucking boring for you saying the same things over and over again.
Tell you what, I get bored of Simon all the time since.
Oh God, no one likes him.
Everybody loves me.
Honestly, no one loves you. That's why they call you the syphilis woman behind your back.
I've never heard anybody say that, Lisa. I did it. We asked a couple of our some friends for questions, and young Rory said he did see you dancing on a table at last year's ABR at 4:00 in the morning.
True or false?
True or false, Lisa? Oh, they've gone. We've lost them. Oh, that was the best question as well.
Oh, we get to do it all over again.
We'll be plugging things in and out.
Let's talk about it briefly then. I really enjoyed the Teapot one, listening back to it. So many bits I'd forgotten about it. It was way better than I thought it would be.
Completely. Yeah, no, it was... And to be honest, as we were recording at the time, fairly flew past, didn't it, really?
Yeah.
Simon and Lisa, we can see that you're still in the meeting, but we can't see or hear you now. So hence why we've changed topic.
Ta-da!
Thanks for coming.
He looks like a naughty schoolboy, doesn't he?
Who does?
Clive. No, you look like a very severe school teacher, a friendly school teacher, but Clive just looks like... I'm willing to bet he didn't look that much different when he was 12, minus the fur face. Look at him.
He looked a lot different 5 years ago.
Like you two, I've kept my natural boyish good looks. Not like certain other people.
You're saying my wife looks like a boy?
No.
I look like...
You'll work out quite quickly, although we're very proud of what we've done and the ride, we don't take ourselves terribly seriously. We keep being told off for that. We were talking with friends last night, and they said to us the usual stuff, what's the craziest and what's the longest? You mean, what's the weirdest thing? And we did come up with 2 weird experiences that were just... One was arriving in Dushanbe, absolutely exhausted, and being part of a music video with this guy in a velvet suit who wanted us to dance while sat on the bikes. And the other one was ending up being in a Hollywood movie that's now on Netflix. It's an awful film with Dominic Purcell. And I was a Viking. It was filmed in Malaysia. And fuck me, that was hot.
It's an awful film. I wasn't there when he was doing it.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do both of those things?
Well, they paid. So there's not much I won't do for money.
What's the film called?
Vikingdom.
Vikingdom. Definitely going to watch that now.
I wouldn't waste your 1 hour.
Did you have lines?
Yeah.
One line.
I shot things for like 5 days, and I'm pretty sure that I'm in about 4 scenes, and each scene's like a few seconds.
But they cut them all. They're like, oh, who's this twat?
Oh.
Good evening, we're Simon and Lisa Thomas, better known as To Ride the World. We're a husband and wife team who've spent the last 17 years travelling around the world on 2 motorcycles. Yeah, 17 years.
Just a few years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we set off in 2003 with a grand plan of travelling for a year and a half. So bearing in mind, this is before you and Charlie set off and made it fashionable. There was no drum roll. We had our 2 motorcycles. We closed the door. We set off. We had a pretty definitive plan, and we drove into the night. And whilst we've been away, this fantastic thing that we all now know as adventure motorcycling grew up around us, and we feel very privileged and lucky to have been part of it. We're back in the UK right now because we came back 2019 to get some medical stuff taken care of for Lisa, and of course then the zombie apocalypse happened. I got bored of saying pandemic. We've been here now for 3 years, and we're working right now very hard to get back to our bikes, which are with a very good friend up a mountain in Tennessee.
I was asked just the other day, was it our intention to get back on the road? And I don't think we've changed our minds about anything. We might alter the way that we travel now, because it was
the way we travel, the mechanism, motorcycles.
Oh no! I'm talking about the style, the different styly. You know.
You mean the duration?
Yeah.
How long we travel for?
Yes, I think so. Are you interviewing me?
Yes.
Okay.
Somebody's got to.
Did you know my plans?
Has that conversation ever come up? The thought of traveling in another way?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It's come up quite a few. It's come up quite a few times over the years. I mean, I think there's a certain number of people that have just asked, but why on bikes? Now, 9 times out of 10, you know that first of all they clearly don't ride motorcycles, otherwise they wouldn't have to ask. We've been on the road for almost 2 decades. Physically, it has taken its toll, and there have been moments of, what would it be like to do a 4x4? Or do something else. And I think it would be fantastic. I think down the road that might happen. But the bottom line is, first and foremost, we're in love with riding motorcycles.
Were you both motorcyclists before you set off in 2003?
Yeah, I was actually on a motorcycle quite a few years before Simon. I started riding when I was 16, which would have made him only 8. So that would have been a bit difficult for him, I think.
I'm having to be really quiet because there's so much I want to say, and none of it's very good. And she's going to kill me later on anyway, so I'm not going to do it.
I don't mind.
I had a moped in high school.
Can you imagine Simon on his size with a little moped?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 6'4" at the time, and actually, I turned 6 foot when I got to 14, and I was genuinely concerned that I was going to carry on growing. I didn't. I topped out at 6'4", and I had this moped, and I ended up getting up an hour and a half early to go to school. My parents couldn't work out why, and the reality was that the moped was 49cc, but it had pedals. But my school was in Cirencester at the top of a very steep dual carriageway, so the only way I was getting up there in the morning was to actually pedal. But boy, it was worth it, because it was all about coming downhill after school had finished, head tucked down, elbows in. We ended up on our 2nd wedding anniversary. We decided, because neither of us, when we got together, neither of us knew the other person was interested in motorcycling or road or anything else. That conversation didn't come up probably for 6 months to a year.
I don't think we actually spoke very much in the first 6 months.
No, there wasn't a lot of talking.
How could that not come up in conversation?
I was 20, 21. Lisa just turned 30. Our social spheres, our interests, neither of us had bikes at the time. It was all very much work. I think that's like a lot of motorcyclists. If they don't actually have a bike, they don't generally walk around telling everybody there's something that I really enjoy doing, but I can't do it right now. It just tends to go away until you've got that bike back, and then all you're talking about is your bike and your helmet and the gear and that kind of thing. But what we did do is, on our 2nd wedding anniversary, we retook our bike tests.
So what sort of riding were you doing before you set off? Were you trail riding, road riding, just popping down to Starbucks?
Oh, God, no. Prior to setting off, the only off-road riding we'd ever done was 2 days on Simon Pavey's BMW off-road course. We'd never been off-road. We rode at the weekends to blow off steam built up, from a week's slog in the office at the jobs. That was it. We had absolutely, when we set off, the only thing that matched our optimism was our ignorance.
We did a few runs abroad as well, didn't we? I travelled across Europe on a motorcycle when I was 16.
With her practice husband, as we now call him.
And so we had a little runabout after we decided to go on the trip, we took a few practice runs with all our kit, etc. And so we went off, hammered around France and Spain.
We'd had a really tricky couple of, 3 or 4 years prior to departing. So the quick synopsis, because one of the questions we get asked probably the most is the why. And then when you say to somebody, what do you mean why? Because there is that, look, if you've got to ask why, I don't think I've got the time to explain. And actually what a lot of people mean is, what was the catalyst? What got you to a situation where you actually made this happen and left? And the bottom line is that we were both working. I had a bad motorcycle accident that basically took off my lower right foot and ankle. I then spent almost 2 years in bed and 5 surgeries, and there's the whole learning to walk again. Then we got back into work and back into just basically the pursuit of more. And we both found it a struggle. I set up a couple of companies, and Lisa and I were just basically mentally and physically spent. And so the whole motorcycle travel thing was because Lisa went back to university. So she, during those university years as a mature student, could take off 3 to 4 weeks. I owned a business and there was a couple of people that I trusted. So incredibly, looking back, we were able to take a month off at a time. And once you've traveled as much as we have and you look back and you talk to your American friends, taking a month off is an absolute luxury. I remember, I think we were in France. We were coming to the end of our 3 or 4 weeks away. You're looking up at the stars and you're having a glass of whatever we were drinking. And we both said, God, wouldn't it be great to do this for longer?
And longer for us at that point was 6 months.
Maximum 6 months. We were looking at 3 months to begin with.
Wouldn't it be great 6 months? And then...
But you remember the conversation? I remember working out, could we do it based on what more would we need? And we went, well, we've got the tent.
We wouldn't need anything.
We've got some camping stuff. What else would we actually need? And we realized that actually that pretty much nothing additional we'd have to buy in order to travel for longer. It was then just working out the nightmare logistics of how. I mean, it's not really possible, is it?
So we thought 6 months, and then we thought, well, if we're doing it for 6 months, why not do it for a year? Because by the time you've done 6 months and settled, it'll be time to turn around and come back.
We worked out very quickly that the level of sacrifice personally and professionally that we were going to have to make to go away for 3 months was such that it didn't put us off. But actually going for just 3 months, it wasn't worth it. So we ended up coming to a situation where we said, look, based on the amount of money in the bank, based on how long we want away and what we think is possible, we were looking at between 12 months and 18 months, which at the time sounded like forever.
It was never anybody else's trip that was an inspiration to you, or had you seen anybody else do it?
No,
that time.
Don't forget, this is 2000, 2001, 2002. Ewan and Charlie really got the ball rolling in terms of making people understand who rode and who didn't ride that you can go and travel on motorcycles.
We were already on the road. I think we've
been going for a year. That happened in 2004.
That was 2004. So, and we where were we when that happened? We were still in Africa, weren't we?
We got down to Cape Town because a friend of ours who we've met online said, this thing going on. I said, no, we haven't heard of it. Oh, it's got Ewan McGregor. So, you're the guy from Train Spotting. He gave us a black market hooky DVD. We were staying with a friend.
And I remember
sitting down with the DVD to watch it at 1 PM, and I remember we watched all of it
in your support truck with the video director and all that kind of stuff. You mean?
I think we were in our friend's spare room at the time, weren't we? Yeah.
We'd lost 25 pounds in body weight. We were absolutely trashed. I do remember watching The Long Way Round in one sitting all the way through to the following morning.
I think actually what happened, I also shouted at the TV quite a lot.
Lisa did get very vocal. I remember Charlie or Ewan or both of them doing certain things, and she would yell out.
Well, what were you yelling out?
Yeah, why do you hate them, Lisa?
I don't hate them. It was just there were a few times when they were.
Why is it? People do expect us to have very severe opinions. I thought the show was absolutely brilliant.
I thought it was great. There were a few times, and I would do this, and I have done it in the past to Simon as well. So it's not just isolated.
You haven't said it to Charlie's face though.
No, I haven't.
You yelled, "Come on, you pussies! Oh my God, what's that? Get up!"
I think I did actually. I think I said, "What's the matter? Why are they? What's the matter with them, pussies and things like that?" In certain situations, that's why. And I think I might have said something like, "I've done that, and if a 5'2" older female can do it, what's their issue?
5'2" older female. That was so polite.
Yeah.
That's so nice of you.
Yeah.
But going back to the question about inspiration, we were very different people then than we are now. So we've become very good friends with Sam Manicom. What?
Sam Manicom, yes, and also
Chris and Aaron Ratte.
Chris and Erin Ratte, and they were the Ultimate Journey.
That was their web address,
Yeah.
ultimatejourney.com.
Along with Sam.
Do you remember meeting Sam? So we were at the very first BMW GS UK meeting. These people rolled up. It was Sam and Birgit Manicom and Elspeth. And these people had been around the world. You know, she was definitely there. They'd been around the world. Elspeth had done this huge journey of 4 years. Sam, 8 years. I remember being so desperate to go and speak and pick his brains and say, I want to do something like this. I also remember completely psyching myself out. And for anyone that knows us now, they'll just laugh at this or they don't believe us. I remember completely psyching myself out, and I remember not having the balls or the gumption to go over because I just kept thinking, but this guy's been around the world for 8 years. He's been on all these continents. There's no way he'll talk to me. What on earth would we say? He has nothing in common. No, I just psyched myself out. I couldn't go and speak to him.
Sam is probably one of the most approachable people you could have met, wasn't he?
Oh, if Sam's listening to this, what we mustn't ever do, you'll have to edit this out. Do not ever refer to Sam as the nicest man in adventure motorcycling. Sorry, Sam, I said it.
Why doesn't he like that? Because it's true.
It's true.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. What are you looking for?
So I love the fact that you go on a bike ride, you fall off a few continents, and you end up getting to know your heroes. So our preparation before we left was lying in bed at the weekends reading these adventure books. Now, don't forget, social media had not launched into what it is now. The word blog had only just come out. And the only reason we had a website is because we were too lazy to email all our family individually.
So we would actually lie in bed and read the Adventure Motorcycling Handbook. We would read all about these things called corrugations and the stories that people had.
How's that possible?
The stories that people had there. And I actually based a lot of the route that we were going to do on some of the chapters from I can't remember which one it was, Adventure Motorcycling Handbook.
It would be
2 or something.
Yeah.
It was really, really early on.
Here we are all these years later, and look who's on the cover.
Hey.
Actually, this is the last version.
I get a warm, fuzzy feeling just seeing that book because it was such an inspiration to me. I had that by my bed for years. It's a great thing.
It's such good reading. It's so well researched. It's so well written. It's very hard for anyone to read through that and not go and want to explore.
I met Chris at one of Austin's events at the film festival, and I met Chris Scott. And I have to say, you say don't never meet your heroes. Because of the book, I imagined him as some real roughy, tufty SAS character. Kind of, it's terrible to say, it was slightly disappointing.
Mild.
Yes, yeah. Not at all what I expected. I expected a completely different person. Crazy, isn't it?
So just to be clear, Chris Scott disappointed you. Wow. This quite unassuming bloody hero.
Yeah.
No, Chris is absolutely charming, man. He really is lovely to spend time with.
I'm intrigued as to what you were doing before you set off. So, Lisa, you went and did a course at university. What was your course in? And Simon, what area were your businesses in, if you're happy talking about those?
First of all, how did we meet? Because then you went into university. What were we doing?
You say.
What do you mean, me say? When did you become coy? So basically, I worked with my best friend, and we basically marketed and sold health clubs. We basically went around the country developing marketing campaigns to help sell memberships. And Lisa owned, I think, the largest or the second largest gymnasium in the middle of the UK. And she brought our company in. That's how we met. I remember the first time I saw her, we opened this massive door into this gymnasium, and there was this leotard-clad woman who was exceptionally fit, bouncing around. And I looked at my friend who owned the company, Andy, and we both, made the usual nods and smirks as men tend to when they're idiots. And I had no idea at the time that was Lisa. And 32 years later, we were going to be here. So we met because Lisa and I were very much into whole health and fitness and bodybuilding and weight training and all that stuff. And then it got to a point where Lisa wanted to change, and she gets bored very, very easily.
Are you still here?
I am still here, still lurking around. And so I said to well, why don't you look at something with computing? She said, well, I don't know anything about computers. And I said, well, I know, but that's the whole point. And things are changing so quickly, you won't get bored. So she genuinely went from somebody who did not know how to turn on a computer, didn't know where the button was. And within a few weeks it wasn't university, it was
college,
a local college. She seemed to have a knack for it. And within the end of the year, she had her lecturers at college saying, you have to go and do a university degree. She went on to do a university degree in Bristol, one of the top IT universities in the country, and was one of only 4 students to come out with a first-class honours degree. You are an annoying overachiever.
It was in computer. It was computer information systems and something else, programming.
People would say, what does your wife do? I'd say, I have no idea, but I just know she's cleverer than I am.
Yeah. Good answer. That's what I
actually
always say.
I enjoyed it. It was fun. I enjoyed all the exams. I liked that bit.
So weird.
I like exams.
No, she actually not the testing. It's just the whole exam thing. She's that student that goes in, and whilst everyone's frantically thinking, "Oh my God, what didn't I cram?" She's there, cool as a cucumber, laying out her 14 pencils in color-coded order. OCD much? And then she's the one that finishes 10 minutes early, and then just sits back and looks smug.
Lisa, you're not denying it.
I'm not actually, no, because you summed it up quite well. Yes, I do have to. I have even to this day, I like to lay out my pencils and have things neat and tidy. It is a bit of OCD, isn't it?
But the OCD comes in pretty handy when you're traveling, because absolutely every item has to have its place. It comes in, it comes out and goes back in the exact same place.
I can pack and unpack the bikes. Oh, we have such a lot of stuff, don't we? We have 4 panniers and 2 bags. I can unpack and pack them all in the pitch black. I do it all by feel. I know where everything is. But even after all this time on the road, Simon goes, where's my extension cable for this? And I'm like, it's where it's always lived in the last couple of decades. And he goes, but where's that? And so I've given up.
Yeah,
totally given up.
That is a bit of a dream of mine, to be able to, because we go away for 10 days tops, and it's always been my dream to have everything packed in the same place. To have the tent at the top. So when you get to your place, the tent's at the top. It's the first thing you take out, you pack your tent. And I've never got my arse into gear to actually do that, to organise it properly. But it would make so much sense if you know where everything is.
When I've seen pictures of you travelling, I have always thought, wow, they're carrying a lot of gear. So is your policy just to sort of take what you need, take slightly more than you need? What's in those panniers?
Well, I think that's quite interesting, because we carry an awful lot less than some people go on the weekend rally with, considering we're living on the road. So that's absolutely everything.
So we have one tank bag, which is our camera gear, and it's not a terribly big tank bag.
We have a roll bag on the back,
which is the tent stuff, and we have the 2 panniers. That's it.
Right.
Occasionally we have an extra roll bag, depending on whether or not we're in winter. We know winter's coming up, so we carry some extra winter goodies.
You're not carrying a huge amount of clothing, for instance?
We have one change of clothes. We have a riding stuff, and then we have one change of clothes. Because 9 times out of 10, you're in your riding gear.
Always have walking boots.
Yeah.
Because we like to hike and walk. But and occasionally we'd carry spare tyres.
But even the tyres, that's only when we know we're going into a region with an incredibly low population, and we're off the beaten track. So, Mongolia is a prime one. You go down to the Gobi Desert. The terrain is rocky, sandy, harsh. There is no connection. We're in Wales right now, and Wales has a population of 3 million. Mongolia is this vast country. The population of Wales is bigger. So there's nothing there. So you have to make sure that you're carrying items that you tend to carry spare items that if something breaks on the bike and there is no fix and the bike will not move, then carry a spare. Whether that's a wheel bearing for a large GS, because there is no simple fix. If a wheel bearing goes on the back, there's no clever cool trick you can do, because that wheel's not going to turn. And spare tires for the likes of Mongolia or the Altiplano in Bolivia, or somewhere where you're really going off track, low population, and no one's coming to help if you get screwed.
Your packing system stayed the same for years now, would you say? Did you discover the best way?
Absolutely the same way.
If it's not broken, don't fix it. But I was going to say, back to what Clive was talking about, the only way mentally any of us are able to travel long term is if you have that packing system absolutely down pat. Because honestly, I've heard so many people go, yeah, the traveling was great, but I stopped because it was just doing my head in. The packing, unpacking, the tenting, all that stuff. Unless you've got it absolutely dialed in, it just becomes a relentless slog.
So we also have a way of doing it as well. So, pull on up somewhere and find, usually in the middle of nowhere, somewhere to camp. And then we just have a way that we go through the process. Simon will always do one thing, I'll do another. And people are trying to say, how do you decide who does what? And we go, well, we don't decide. It just fell into place. I'm better at doing other stuff. Simon's better at doing a few things.
Wow. Yeah, I'm the guy that picks up heavy stuff. But those roles just happened. I mean, a few things changed, but yeah, we found our roles pretty easily. I think we make a very good team, and we divide things up, and you play to your strengths, your mental and physical strengths. And we're very, very lucky that we both found partners that were able to work together well. Because I've got a lot of friends who love their spouses, but they said to me, "Oh my God, I couldn't work with her." We love spending time together.
How many years is it now?
32.
32. And the majority of that has been 24/7.
Do you have a packing list that you make available to people on your website, which is number 2 ridetheworld.com?
I think there is somewhere.
We did have one up at one point.
I think there's all kinds. I think there's a packing list. I think there's a camera list. I think there's a gear list. I think there's all the changes we made to both the bikes. The site is something I've not worked on for a little bit, but there is so much content up there. Busy right now reworking the old diary and putting that back up online.
Yeah, we're going to be revamping.
But there's so much information we put up about, links to all the bikes and the parts. And yeah, I'm pretty sure up there somewhere. There's whole pages about how to fund the trip and sponsorship. And because we get asked the same question so many times that eventually it just made sense to put all that information on the website. So when someone says, oh, what about that? You can just give them a link. There's so many things I want to do, but we just don't have any time between trying to get back to the bikes, between still speaking to sponsors, new projects, setting up a photography school, because we've had to reinvent ourselves whilst we're in the UK. To most people's surprise, we are not sponsored up the wazoo. People aren't handing us money. So when we stopped traveling and we stopped basically sharing a lot of the stuff we were sharing, our revenue streams just fell away because we don't have sponsors and people just giving us money.
Yeah, one of the guys at the talk, when we did the Globetrotters talk last weekend, he had listened to our presentation and he came up afterwards and said, so with all this sponsorship that you get, obviously that's how you pay for your trip around the world. I'm like, absolutely no. And he said, but you've got stickers on your bike, lots. And I said, well, I guess initially people used to smile at us and we used to
get with a smile, you were a sponsor.
Yeah, a sticker that went on the bikes. That did change later on, mind you, but it was 8 years before we had any real form. Weren't we in 5 years? Sorry, we're 5 years into the trip.
Sponsorship is one of those really misunderstood things. There are people out there who really work hard at the social media thing.
Well, there was no social media
and are now earning good money.
So how far into the trip did you start thinking about writing about the trip and submitting pieces about it?
Probably quite quickly, because we were just desperate to share what we were seeing and experiencing.
We did men's health in 2004, I think. That was one of the first articles, men's health. We were in South Africa. We met up with the men's health team there.
And they paid us quite well. And we went, oh my God, you can make money doing this.
That was one of the first ones.
That's changed.
And then a couple as we were coming on up through South America. And then when we hit the States, then that obviously that was 2007. Things started to change there. And the adventure world was opening up at that point as well. From 2003 really through to 2007, I think we were very lucky in the fact that the trip was ours. There was no social media, there was no Facebooking, there was no Instagramming, and we were just able to enjoy it. I mean, we would have a problem with even connecting at home because we used to use Skype now and again when we come across an internet cafe.
We had 41 computers connected to a 56k modem.
Yeah, so no smartphones, and it was a different way of traveling, and I have to say, I really liked it.
I think social media, and we've got to be careful because we did Teapot One and Bruce a little while ago, and we went off this rant. Social media is absolutely fantastic. It's a great portal. It provides a great opportunity for people to share things that they're passionate about. The problem I think we have now is that you've got this weird situation where there's almost an overshare in the fact that everyone's sharing all the time. And so there's so much white noise.
So much.
It can be difficult to pick out what the really good stuff is. But also there seems to be almost this burden, this weight of responsibility of both expectation of viewers listening to someone talk about a journey they're going to do, and you're going to podcast it and share it and social media it, and also that person leaving, committing to that idea because it sounds cool and it looks fun, and just not understanding the sheer amount of work that it takes to travel, survive, fuel, logistics, all of the other stuff that traveling should be about, and then thinking about, it's not just a case of recording me going over this hill. But for me to make a story out of it, even if it's a 30-second Facebook something, most stories have to have a beginning, a middle, and end. So you've got to have your B-roll, you've got to have something in the middle, and then you've got to end up with, this is where we went, even if it's 30 seconds. And it all takes so much time. And I think a lot of people just don't realize. And when they do realize, they begin to think, man, this social media stuff, this blogging of it, this is taking away from the journey. And for those people that it doesn't, that's fantastic. But so many people we've spoken to over the last 3 years,
they realize they took on a bit too much. And that's when we always say to them, take a step back, restrict how much you're sharing. People will still love to see it and they'll look forward to it, but don't have to commit to every single day.
You're driven to the edge of the Grand Canyon, have a look at it from the other side of the phone, put the phone and the camera down.
And make the most of what you're doing. Otherwise,
also, just finding the story is difficult sometimes, isn't it? I think we've both, I'm going to plug myself here and say we've both written for Overland magazine. And it's quite, and when I've done it, I found it really difficult, even though it's been quite an ambitious trip for me. Finding the story in it, I found really difficult. Finding a compelling, as you say, Simon, a beginning, a middle, and an end isn't as easy as you think it's going to be, is it? If nothing disastrous has happened, you've really got to search something out.
It's an interesting one because when we write now, we do sit down and we'll end up picking 4 or 5 things that happen in a country, and then we'll develop a story, because it's not a case of working out what to put in. The most challenging part, whether it's a presentation or a story, is what to leave out. But then you get situations where we wrote for 5 years for Roadrunner magazine in the US, and they really like the stories to be covering lots of ground. But if you've only got 2,500 words, and that's a pretty big article today, 2,500 words, you throw in a bunch of photographs, that's 5 or 6 pages, 2,500 words to describe your travel through, let's say, half a dozen countries. It's all too easy just to provide no story, and in 2,500 words, you've just described the traveling process. And for me, when I read something, I want some of the nitty gritty. I want to know something about the people and their perspective, and not just what they saw. I want to know how it made them feel when they were doing it. And so it can be a really difficult challenge. The best stories for us to write are the simplest ones. We wrote a chapter for Sam's book, and that was lovely because it was just one experience of us getting up to Tajikistan border. It's one of the highest borders in the world, and then going down the other side. The mountains, the color, the thin air, and then getting up to this border. And it sounds intimidating. It's a country border, Tajikistan on the Silk Road. And it was a couple of oil drums, massive oil containers, and this incredibly bizarre experience where we went into one. It was dark, it was smoky, and the soldier was having his uniform washed, and he sat there in his white thermal underwear, which was no longer white, and his toenails were now coming through the socks, and it was the longest set of yellow claws I've ever seen on a human being, with basically the piss streaming out, the stains on his underpants. And it was so dark and creepy, and he took so long to write in a book that would be better suited from Harry Potter, this big leather-bound book. And I thought, if he suggests a cavity search, I'm out of here. I'm just going, I don't care about the AK-47s, I'm legging it. But that was the story. That was the whole thing. And it was great fun to write.
So really mid-2000s, when you had this great writing and you had these great photographs, I'm not saying it was easy, but we think you would have found it a lot more difficult if you'd been setting off now, say, and you had to feed all the different monsters that there are now to feed.
And will you have to do that going forwards?
I don't think you have to feed them. I think it's a choice. Luckily, we're all different. What do you think? Would it be more difficult setting off today?
You might feel as though you are expected to use all of the channels. And I think it depends on why you're doing the trip. Don't lose the whole point of your journey, which surely is to be enjoying it and getting away from the stresses and strains of previous life?
I don't know. It is an interesting one. I mean, one of the things we say regularly, presentations and talks and so on, is that there is no wrong reason to travel. Having said that, I think it's really important for people before they set off. Let's give this some parameters. Let's say someone's going to go and they've got some sponsorship and they've said, look, we're going to go for 6 months to a year, which is a bloody big commitment. If they set off thinking, well, I'm going to go and do this journey because I want to become famous, I want to become known as a traveler, I want to earn some money, then it's a really good idea to have a clear idea as to exactly how hard that's going to be, how many hours you are going to be spending racing the battery on your little laptop. As it gets cold outside, you can't feel your hands and you've still got to edit God knows how much content, whether it's writing, whether it's video. Every single evening, you've got 3 or 4 cameras you were given from a sponsor, and that's fantastic, but every single one needs to be downloaded. Every single one has to be stored somewhere. I think, we've met a lot of people that have just gone, it just became too much. It became overwhelming. I just hated it. You've got some people that absolutely love all that and thrive on it. But I think it's important to have a clear idea. When you set out, why are you traveling? What do you want from it? From Lisa and myself, it was simple. We needed a mental and a physical reset. What we didn't anticipate was that a year into the journey, instead of having visited 122 countries and all 7 continents, and that was the plan, we'd only reached South Africa. And what we weren't prepared for was the fact that we were looking around at the last year, and what struck us was how much happier we were and how much more we liked who we were when we weren't surrounded with all of the trappings of apparent success. Before we set out, and again, it's something we say regularly, we had a very high standard of living. We worked really, really hard, and we had an absolutely shitty quality of life. And those two things are very, very different.
What I'm intrigued by, so you saved up all this money, you sold pretty much everything so you could afford to go travelling. And at some point, all the money's gone. The only asset you've got left is your house at home. I'd love to understand who raised it first and how that conversation went to sell the house so you can carry on.
It was always a joint decision. Like getting on the road was a joint decision. We have similar ideas come up at the same times, and wouldn't it be nice if? And with selling the house, it was, are we ready to stop and resume our lives, which what we always thought we would in the UK, and get back into work mode? Or do we feel like we've just begun? Would we be prepared to give all of that up? Can we give all of that up and survive on the road? We knew that we could travel pretty cheaply, camping most of the time, looking after ourselves, doing all the bike mechanic stuff, apart from a few times when we have needed the pros. And we went, I think if we don't do it now, I mean, how old was I when I started? You mean
if we don't carry on?
I think we would always, what if we had carried on? I mean, we weren't going to have children. I had taken a complete break from the career. I hadn't got the option to go back, even though I was offered that. I said, no, you were self-employed anyway. So we went, now's the time to do it. And parents were happy and keen for us to continue.
I think it's easy to imagine from the outside that you have these very black and white moments where, right, that's it, let's sell the house. And because, again, a lot of people tell their story in that fashion.
It took a lot for us to
it doesn't happen that way. Our funds were dwindling. We were traveling now we were 2.5, 3 years in. We'd rented the house out, and for 3 years we had some income coming in, so at least we could pay the mortgage. But I think what forced us into that corner of even considering selling the house, which was terrifying, because we're of an era that we were brought up that your house is your castle, that's your bolt hole, that's your security, because they're not making any more land, you haven't got any money, you've got to have property. So the idea of selling it was truly terrifying. But after a year of traveling and nobody was renting the house and we were still paying the mortgage, and the directors that had come into the company that we'd sold who were screwing it up, Lisa and I did have a decision. We did have a moment where we both went, well, we can go back to the UK. We can breathe the life back into what should be a very profitable business that should be paying you dividends. But the problem is, we both said at the time, it was so difficult to leave, to cut those ties, to take the financial and personal hits, family, etc. We both said, if we go back and breathe life back into this company, would we ever regain momentum to break free a second time. It's just too easy to get back into the UK and get sucked back into watching Neighbours and EastEnders and drinking too much wine and working too hard. And
when you were away, did you never sort of have dreams in the night that you were still back in the UK and still back doing your old jobs, and then you would wake up and realise where you were? And
no, you're too buzzed, you're too exhausted, you're too overwhelmed. When we were traveling, and this didn't change for 17 years, it's all encompassing. One of the most intoxicating things about traveling on motorcycles is that it is all encompassing, and the problems you tend to face are far more visceral, far more real, far more tangible. So your brain doesn't have an awful lot of time.
No, but I was just thinking, was that idea sort of a nightmare that you didn't want to come true? Being back in your old lives. Almost. That was something you were trying to avoid.
I think so. Yeah. I think for me it would have been, what was the point of it all? Why did we struggle and save and struggle to get back a life of some sort rather than just work all the time? You were saying about waking up. Do we ever wake up from a dream that you were back in our lives? I don't tend to sleep, so
don't tend to sleep. What do you mean you don't tend to sleep?
Lisa will fall asleep for an hour when she goes to bed, and then she's up all night. Her brain just doesn't stop.
So I never dream. Never, ever. I probably do dream, but I just don't remember the horrific things I dream about. Yeah, I just don't tend to sleep.
Crikey.
But selling the house, I remember that really well, and it was a decision we came to over the course of about 8 months to a year.
And we didn't actually have to come back to the UK. We'd set up power of attorneys, and so my father was power of attorney, and we'd been chatting to him on and off, and he said, well, if you do it, I'm going to make sure that all your mortgages and bills and things like that are paid off, and then I am going to take some money and put it into an account which you cannot touch, which was brilliant of him. And so
the rest of the money he did give us, which was quite nice.
And he actually did all the selling, he did all the legal work and everything. We didn't have to do anything. He acted as us. Fantastic. And we had a bit more to play with after that.
And we said, okay, we're going to travel for another 6 months, but then we'll go back. And then the 6 months came and went. Are we ready? Another 6 months. I mean, and the goals and ambitions were always 122 countries for no other reason than those are the countries we thought we could travel to with some sensible risk management. Those are the countries we thought we can handle. Yeah, we're adrenaline junkies to some point, but we don't play Russian roulette.
How much of this time, whilst you've been away, have you been under an actual solid roof?
Some nights here and there. I mean, 95% of it, I'd argue, is the tent.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain countries where it's better that you are under some kind of roof and it's just as cheap. Going through
Thailand, for example.
Thailand is an example. Indonesia, India.
It's more expensive to camp than just get a hotel.
Yeah, and a hotel, a room,
a concrete room with something that they call a shower, where the black weevils come out and land in your hair,
and then a fan, and a lot of the time it was so hot and humid that you wouldn't sleep and get any, well, not that I do anyway, but have any rest in your tent, because it would just be unbearable. So having a small concrete room with one of these fans that kind of just does a circle of the room once every 30 minutes.
Yeah, it keeps time with the moon going around the earth.
It does at least produce some air movement, and you do get a chance to rest.
But the majority of the time has been in our Hillyberg tent.
That's another how we've been able to be on the road for so long, is that it is or can be a very frugal lifestyle. Weeks and weeks without having any kind of shower or access to water, and so you just get used to it. You cope with it. Sometimes the food availability is not very good, and so you eat very basic food items. I'll always be cooking, unless I'm in Thailand, and then there's just no point. You just eat there.
But you're not driven. I know that. Tell me what you guys think. We found ourselves in the UK. We're very, very busy. We've had an awful lot on our plate at the moment, but we still have moments of boredom, and we're not necessarily cognizant that we're bored, but we're finding reasons to think about spending money or have a drink or reward ourselves with something. When we're traveling,
the reward is there.
Yeah, that need, that space, that void that we're trying to fill with a moment's entertainment, with a drink, it just isn't there. You don't need to.
You don't need it at all.
I go out on my bike once or twice a month, if I'm lucky, for a day. And she always says to me, you're a much nicer person when you get back. And I feel a much nicer person when I get back. And, it's almost like you're having a crack with your mates. And when you're riding, it's almost like a meditative state that you get yourself into.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's all you're thinking about is is the curve and the engine and the bend and the big goofy smile on your face and
Or how
talking
not
to your
to hit that
friends
rock and go off the mountain, you know, that
all-
kind of thing.
and each mile on a bike is a victory. Because people ask us, oh, how often do you fall off? Like, all the bloody time. Basically, there are more reasons why you should be continuously falling off based on gravity and physics than staying upright.
Who is the sketchiest rider? Who scares the other one the most? And I'm kind of thinking, Simon, with your 2 broken legs and your broken neck, I'm guessing it's you, but I'd like to ask Lisa that question. Who is the sketchiest rider?
He's a pretty steady rider, actually. I know he's got the technical ability off-road as well.
I think she's a better rider than I am.
I don't know. I don't think we scare each other. We're both we're sensible riders, because when you're out in the middle of nowhere, you've got to be. You can't take risks. It's risky enough in on some of the roads.
I can't answer the question because I don't think either of us think the other person's a sketchy rider. Lisa is one of the most accomplished riders I've ever spent time with, and I'm not just saying that because she's my wife, but the bottom line is, I mean, if we've calculated so far based on GPS and all the other stuff, we've got 507,000 miles under our belts. She's had maybe 1 or 2 halfway decent spills that would have happened to anybody just based on luck and bad luck and happenstance. Lisa does not think she's a good rider, but as I keep saying to her, 507,000 miles in 80 countries, and you haven't damaged the bike and you haven't damaged yourself. That is not luck. You make consistent good choices. 36 deserts. She rides in the sand better than I do. You make better decisions, and ultimately being a good motorcyclist is not just about bouncing along on the back wheel, because yeah, that looks cool, but it's about making good decisions and getting to the end of each day having tackled terrain that morning you thought was out of your comfort zone.
And it's not, it's not all about speed. I've never been a speed freak.
Be really careful what you say, because I've ridden with you. Really?
No.
Okay, so what about California? We were riding with a buddy of ours. We got the panniers, and Lisa's moaning. I mean, properly English moaning about, I'm not feeling it. I'm not riding it. And I said to a friend, Isa, do you want to tell her what you've seen and why I'm frustrated? And he said to Lisa, you don't think you're riding very well? She says, no, not really. He said, I'm having to keep up with you and I'm finding it a struggle. We were Californian back roads, really twisty. She says, yeah, but on the corners, it's just not feeling right. He said, you've got knobbly tyres that have no knobbles left. And the reason you can't lean over any further is because your panniers are on the ground. And she went, oh, are they? He said, we're both working to keep up with you. You think you're somehow less than because you're putting your panniers on the ground.
But I think the point you were making earlier, Simon, was that, am I right in saying that it's actually quite cheap to be on the road? Dan and Ed said this, Clive. Remember when they were talking about going down through Africa, that actually the whole preparation is quite expensive and getting all the kit together. But once you're on the road, your day-to-day expenses can be quite low.
The UK is one of the most expensive countries to exist in. So once you get out of the UK, once you've realized that traveling becomes expensive if you want to travel quickly, because traveling quickly requires a degree of convenience and service from other people, and the world just doesn't exist on that level. We presume it does, because if you're lucky enough to be brought up in a developed country, Canada, most of Europe, the UK, that's our norm. But that is not how the world operates. So if you want convenience and you want ease in order to to travel quickly, the only way of getting those things are to pay very heavily for those services. But if you're willing to travel slowly and you're willing to basically learn as you go and fix stuff yourself and take whatever the world throws at you, it does not have to be expensive at all. In fact, it can be far cheaper than actually just being in the UK.
Our biggest costs would always be visas, and then having to go into a city to deal with those visas. So the cost there always went up, and transportation
from continent to continent.
Yeah.
That was it.
So when you're on the move, what kind of mileages are you looking to do on an average day, or do you have big days and small days?
Honestly, again, it's almost an impossible question to answer. If we were going through just 3 or 4 countries in Europe, then you'd probably say 300 or 400 miles per day. But again, I mean, the furthest we've ever traveled in a 24-hour period on this journey was 1,204 miles.
Whoa.
It was horrible.
There was a reason for that.
There was a reason for it, and we were then absolutely beat for 3 days. Our worst day ever was we were trying to make forward movement for 14 hours and we
We
gained
made
6 miles. That was in the
miles.
middle of the Amazon.
So it depends on the terrain. I mean, if you're road based, and the roads are pretty good, you can clock up quite a few miles.
We can bang out 500 miles relatively easily.
Wow.
But,
You scared me with even at 300. That's a scary number to me.
it depends on where you are. So if you're traveling on the interstate in the States, you can do 500 and you can do that in 3 hours and bam, you're finished.
We crossed from California over to Florida because we had the new motorcycles and we were launching them at a big conference for Cena, the communications company, and we were very, very late. We crossed the USA in 2.5 days.
Cena. We've been saying Senna for years. Cena.
They say Cena.
And then you've got other times when you're in a desert. So we're crossing Australia, touching the 7 deserts, internal deserts. So you cut right back there. You might get 80 miles in, or you're on the road in India, and you can only manage 100 miles before you're worn
and it
out.
feels like 1,000. I mean, I was talking to friends actually just last night, and they said, were there any countries that surprised you riding? And I said India, and I said it was a shame because we've met a few people that had warned us about what it's like to ride a big motorcycle in India, and I'll put my hands up. Pure arrogance, based on how much traveling we'd done up until that point. What came out of my mouth was, "Oh, I think we'll be fine." I kind of poo-pooed what they were saying and didn't take it seriously because I know this traveling thing. Don't worry. Absolute idiot. We got to India. I have to say that we were mentally and physically spent. We'd come through the road of bones and Russia and Mongolia and the stand. So yes, when we did get to India, we were tired. There is no way of verbally communicating what it's like to ride in India. It's more like negotiating a very large metal dance where 1,000 accidents should be happening around you all the time, every moment, and they're not. Which is why you have to believe in a higher power, because there's no other explanation as to why the roads are not awash in blood and body parts. We jokingly came out of India and we said, well, we know how it's got its name. I'll never drive it again.
We would, actually.
The reality is we would love to go back to India. It was an absolutely incredible place to ride a motorcycle and to photograph and to explore. Incredible.
Finally wrapping up the mileage thing, you just can't say. It's heat, it's cold, it's snow,
it's actually
everything.
Fuel. The two biggest motivators in terms of where you have to be for us is water and fuel.
So if we were aiming for somewhere, I mean, I've designed the route, and so I'll look at it every single night and make a decision as to where we're heading. If we've got to, I mean, the main pinpoint then would be border crossings. Which border crossing are we heading to, and how much time we have on the visas? And then you have to make certain miles regardless. And because we've never, ever, ever overstayed on a visa. You just do not do that.
How difficult have you found it to assimilate back into civilian life?
Incredibly hard.
Really difficult.
Really hard.
Even today, we've been back here over 3 years. It is a struggle.
I think because we never really intended to come back and stay. I mean, we came back, for me, it was for my health.
We got off the plane with hand luggage, our cameras and a toothbrush.
Yeah.
That was it. We were here for 8 weeks.
Yeah, and then we were heading off. And then I got ill, and then Simon got ill. I got iller. And we then realized it was COVID. That knocked me. I was out for about 10 weeks with that. But that was because of underlying medical conditions. It really hit me hard. And then on recovering, we were beginning to go, okay, possibly we're well enough now to get back out. And then the world shut down. And so then we had the time period of being totally isolated where we are, because we're in a rural area. And in a way, it was nice because I was recovering from procedures, etc. My brain, I wasn't well enough to ride, even if I could. It must have been terrible for Simon, because for one thing, I was not who I normally am. I was unwell and recovering, and he was then stuck with no motorcycle and a wife who wasn't really doing what she normally does in an area that we hadn't intended to be, with nothing around us that was ours.
It's interesting. So I've been listening to Lisa talk, and I've been trying to analyze how it's actually affected us. Let me put a different slant on it. For almost 2 decades, we tend to all have an idea in our own brains as to who we are. I still look in the mirror and I'm like, who's that old bloke? We've all got this
I look
impression
at you like that too.
We've all got this impression of who we are or who we want to be. And that mental impression is made up of your family and your friends and the shirts and everything you own. And it's all that stuff. For almost 2 decades, we were on a motorcycle almost 7 days a week. We had helmets, we had riding suits.
Looked pretty cool.
Suddenly, it wasn't just a case of coming back and finding that I felt like a fish out of water, but I didn't know who I was. I've been a very clearly defined traveler, but motorcyclist for almost 2 decades. You'd roll into a town in Africa or South America, anywhere. People know that's what you are. That's who I'm happy being. I'm the guy that rides a bike. Not very well, but suddenly there's no helmet, there's not a glove, there wasn't even a motorcycle magazine, there was nothing that identified me with the person that I've been for almost 2 decades. And I think mentally, even today, that's still a really big challenge. Coming on here, the podcast, I said to Bruce, we feel somewhat fraudulent because we don't have bikes here. We haven't ridden bikes consistently. We've ridden bikes 2 or 3 times
I think
in the
that
last
was a
3
lot
years.
that you said. Bruce didn't actually understand why we thought that way.
No,
we
well,
feel
you
a bit
wouldn't know.
imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Why are we talking about this stuff? It's foreign. I kind of don't recognize us at the moment. We're back into that position that we had thought of at the beginning of our trip when we made the decision to sell the house and continue on. If we had gone back to the UK at that point, it would have been difficult to get the momentum to leave again. It's not that it's difficult to get the momentum, it's difficult now to see forwards and be able to build up a business that we're doing here at the moment, pay the bills that we've not had to pay for the last 20 years, survive in the UK, as most people are struggling at the moment, and also try to save and plan to get back out on the road. And it's become, because nobody's paying us to do it, we do it ourselves. So it's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, and we're getting older.
We will get back to it, of that I'm sure, but it is taking us longer, and it is proving to be more challenging.
Assuming you get back out on the road again soon and you travel for another number of years until you get to the stage where you just think, actually now I want to stop. Maybe you'll never get to that stage. Do you think you'll look back and have any regrets?
No, I don't do regret.
I would regret that I didn't start earlier. I left it. I was turning 41 when we started. Yeah, I wish I had done it a lot earlier, but then you weren't around then. So
and I don't mean to sound trite, but when I say I don't do regret is a luxury we allow ourselves. Regret does not serve a purpose. I would regret doing a bunch of stupid things and then doing them again because I'm too stupid to learn from my mistakes. The bottom line is life is about making mistakes and then hopefully being surrounded by friends and family that will support you if the consequences of those mistakes are severe enough until you get to the other side. Or just picking yourself up and realizing that, I shouldn't do that again. But none of us are perfect. We've all got baggage, we've all got history. But the reality is that if you get anywhere near to being someone who likes yourself today, you have to accept that, well, that's because of all the great things that have happened to you. It's also because of the difficult and the challenging things that happened to you that you've had to overcome.
People regret things they don't do, don't they? Mainly, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's our lives have been a set of rolling cliches, and here's one for you. I would rather regret something that I have done than regret something I haven't done. And oh my God, the number of conversations we've had with some really good friends and some abject strangers over the years, and they've said, I regret this or I regret that. And I said, yeah, but you don't regret it enough. And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you've talked now for several hours, because normally there's still alcohol involved. You've talked several hours about you're envious of our journey, and you've spoken an awful lot about the fact that your kids are now grown up and they've gone away, so the time is right. And you've talked a lot about the fact that you've been regretting not doing something for the last X number of years, but you don't regret it enough to change it. What terrifies people is change. I think the idea of change is terrifying because everyone presumes that it's going to get worse, not better. And the reality is that actually there's just as many reasons why a whole slew of fantastic experiences are going to come your way as bad ones. But as we all got this degree of self-preservation, chances are you'll manufacture a situation once you've left, whether it's to start a new family, start a new job, go on a bike journey. If you've got half a brain, chances are things will work out pretty well for you.
You don't hear many big life change stories where the punchline is, and I just wish I'd not done any of this. Wish I just stayed doing exactly what
I don't regret. I was just sitting back thinking, what do I regret? And I don't really regret anything apart from not starting
earlier.
Do you regret pushing me off that bridge in the Amazon?
No, not really.
Now the truth's coming out.
A very good story.
Yeah, now the truth comes out.
I regret the fact that we've not been able to get back on the road yet, but that's just circumstances.
But
that's
you don't actually regret it, because you can't regret something that you don't have complete 100% control over.
Yeah.
I regret the circumstance we're in now, but do I? Because the bottom line is, if we were not, Lisa is now healthier and fitter than she's been in 40 years. She's on less medication. So yes, this has been this huge life-changing situation of we're stationary, but we're in a beautiful part of Wales. It's spectacular. So for all of the whinging that I've done about not being on the road, if we'd not been here for this length of time, we would have not had an opportunity to get Lisa as healthy and as fit as she is now. And the bottom line is that for all the traveling and for all the waxing lyrical, if Lisa wasn't here to enjoy it with me, to be part of it, it wouldn't have as much value.
You'd be a happy widower.
I'd be miserable.
You'd have my motorbike as well.
Good point. That would work. Yeah, okay, I'm convinced. Yeah, you're right.
Most people that listen to this podcast, including me and Noel, not so much Noel, mainly me, because I've actually got a proper job, can only spend a couple of weeks a year doing our motorbike adventures. From all of the countries you've been to, if somebody were to be able to fly in for 2 weeks, hire a bike when they get there, do a couple of weeks riding and fly back, where would you recommend?
I'd say Mongolia.
Mongolia.
You both agree on that very easily.
Mongolia for both of us in the top 5 in terms of pure brutal, wonderful, raw experience. Both the riding, both the people, the food was fucking awful. But you don't travel for the food unless you're just on holiday. Mongolia was beyond rewarding, and the people, the whole experience. I mean, to be on a bike, I don't care whose bike it is, but to be on a motorcycle and to realize that you're simply cruising south over the Mongolian steppe, and now you're riding a motorcycle in the Gobi Desert.
I got another one actually, which is kind of a combo off-road, although I suppose nowadays it's mainly on-road. I'd say Argentina. I loved Argentina. From the top to the bottom, east to west, the
diversity is amazing.
We had some great off-road.
As a country, it's got everything. You've got the Mars-like Atacama Desert in the north, and you can nip over into Chile in the Valle de la Luna. This Mars red, dry desert landscape. You've got beautiful, beautiful colonial cities. You've got expansive. Well, you've got Patagonia. There's nothing else can be said. You've got the giant playground, which is the Andes. You've got the glaciers and the frozen wasteland of the south. The southernmost point you can ride to. It's got everything, and the people are fantastic.
Food, and the people are so friendly, and I really, really enjoyed Argentina.
Which would you choose out of those two, Clive? 2 great recommendations.
Yeah, amazing, both of them, and the way you describe them makes them sound equally brilliant. I would probably, I think I said in the last podcast, I think to Bruce asked us where would we go, and I think I said South America, so I'd probably go Argentina. I think for the variety of what's there, I get the impression Mongolia is similar across a large expanse of the country, but that's based on my absolute ignorance.
Mongolia for us, I mean, part of the reason we loved Mongolia was that we didn't die, we didn't get injured,
but we also
90% of the time we felt out of our depth.
We also like being in the middle of nowhere, nobody to rely on. There's not much infrastructure. It's very hard, gnarly tracks sometimes, and so actually pushing ourselves. I just enjoy.
Those are the landscapes.
The large expanse of nothing. That's why I like deserts.
Those are the landscapes that make you absolutely aware as to how tiny and insignificant you are.
But they're also so stunning and beautiful. The landscape from the north of Mongolia, heading down through the middle to the south and the Gobi, and then across west up into the Altai Mountains. It's it's so different and stunning.
I go good call with Argentina.
Yeah.
Great food,
Yeah.
great steak, great lamb in the south, lots of red wine, tons of infrastructure. So you don't have to go off road if you don't want to, but you know that it's there if you want to go and challenge yourself and tackle some weird route up into the mountains. And the views and the people are second to none. It was fantastic.
So what are you guys doing now to earn a living and pay the rent, etc.?
We've had some success selling some photographs over the years. Bearing in mind, when I set out, I'd never held a camera, never taken a photograph. Least had taken snapshots. But the minute we left, we were just driven to start sharing what we were seeing. And we took some really, really, really bad photographs. And slowly they got a little bit better. And photography has truly become a passion. And although we sell a few prints here and there, what became very apparent was we've got an awful lot of people, and whether they're using their iPhones or whether they're using bigger cameras, an awful lot of frustration. People saying, well, I've got this gear, but my photographs don't look like yours. So we've ended up setting up an educational photography business in the UK. We're based in Snowdonia National Park, so we're incredibly lucky because you haven't got to go very far to find an inspiring landscape to photograph.
We've just got to walk outside our front door and it's there. So we're very lucky.
And for 2023, we've got 3 or 4 multi-day retreats. So people come along. We've got this great location. We're working with Steph Jevons over at Moto Camp. So she's got 2 beautiful lodges. We're on the slopes of the second highest peak in Snowdonia, Cadair Idris. We've got teaching facilities. We've got professional chefs. So people come along. And for 3 days and 3 nights, we literally show them basically how to use the cameras they've got, how to take great photographs.
And it doesn't matter what camera.
How to edit them, any camera at all. Everything from an iPhone to a big digital SLR camera. It's not about the gear. It's about using the right techniques in the right way, capturing the right kind of images.
It sounds like motorbike riding, doesn't it?
It does. And then we've got some online training we're doing. We've got... we're launching an iPhone photography school just for iPhones. People can come along. We've got events going on in the UK. Join us for one day, and we'll show you how to use your iPhone to capture photographs that most people aren't capturing on their multi-thousand-pound cameras. It's about using the right techniques at the right time to capture the images. Anybody can do it.
And then there's also in one of the courses, it's the learning about the camera and how to get that shot and how to set it up, but also a little bit of editing as well. And then we also do a separate editing course as well, using a variety of software.
The amount of interest, I've been stunned at the amount of interest in the editing. Last year we went along, we were at the Armchair Adventure Festival. Brilliant event, Matt and Reese. Well, probably one of the crappiest schedules or time to do a talk is Sunday morning, 10 o'clock, because everyone's hungover from the night before, Saturday night.
Packing up to go.
And those who aren't hungover are packing up, ready to go. I was asked, would I do a processing and editing tuitional course at 10 o'clock Sunday morning? I said, sure, I'll be hungover, but sure.
We thought, there might be 5 people. We can just take it easy, have a coffee, just chat a bit.
I think we ended up having almost 100 people in the audience.
Wow, well done.
And that's me on stage in this tent. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I haven't done any preparation for this at all. So I literally got out a couple of photographs and I just did some live edits so people could see. Because our point is, if you want to edit an image, editing should be 30 seconds to 3 minutes.
To edit the photograph?
That's how long it should take.
Right.
Yeah. If it takes you longer than 5 minutes, you're either really enjoying it, you're really bad at it, or someone's paying you an absolute fortune. And I do think that most images that get shared online, if you're looking to impress your friends or really share something that you're passionate about, 30 seconds to 3 minutes can have a transformative effect. Cameras capture so much drama and detail, but if it's on automatic, and most cameras are, we're all guilty of that, especially iPhones. Your camera is a great device, but if it's left on auto, all it's doing is taking a guess. And the files are so full of detail that within 30 seconds to 3 minutes, using the right tools in the right way, you can have an image that truly has
Well, it truly represents
wow.
what you saw, because a lot of people go, oh yeah, but it didn't really look like that. It was actually a bit more like this, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't spend the time getting it. Well, your camera has actually got that information in there.
How do you strike the balance between manipulating an image so that it's striking, keeping the image realistic as to how it looked on the day?
Well, there's two forms of editing.
Honestly, practice.
Well, there's two forms of editing. One is creative editing, and the other is, well, what's the term you call it?
Well, so you've got creative editing. Editing an image, I would say, is you end up with a image that doesn't resemble
what you saw,
the scenario you were in when you took it. You know, the sky wasn't. I mean, we've all seen the stuff where you've seen edited lines or images on Facebook from someone's trip, and you're thinking, but the sky looks beyond blue, and the grass looks like it's from the Wizard of Oz, and the yellow of that just looks surreal. It is very difficult to creatively edit an image and still have it look somewhat realistic, and that doesn't float my boat. I know for some people they love that. I think you can just go too far, and with the tools these days, it's just too easy to take Photoshop or Lightroom or one of Skylum's products like Luminar and just go too far. And the reason I know that is I've done it to thousands of photographs.
Some people do intentionally do it, and that's where the creative editing come in. They actually want something to look like it's from The Hobbit, or and so they go to that side of things. But what you're bringing out and what I try to bring out is what I actually saw, and possibly I made a mistake in taking the photograph, or I got the lighting wrong, and I just want to bring
it's just
back
too light, or it's just too dark, or the image is undersaturated. And there's really simple but powerful tools that we can use. Some of them are free tools that just allow us to basically remix the ingredients. If you can imagine your camera captures all these ingredients. But then the final cake that is produced, maybe it's too sweet for you, maybe it's too salty, maybe it's too dry, maybe it's too moist. All post-processing does, if it's done right, is allow you to rebalance those ingredients to produce a cake that you think, well, actually, that tastes much more like I wanted it to. And ultimately, if you edited an image correctly, it should have wow and punch and drama. It should tell a story. But the first thing someone does when they look at it isn't think, oh, I wonder how this was edited. Yeah. The first thing is, oh, that's a really nice photograph. Yeah. And yeah, trust me, I've over-edited thousands of photographs. I mean, still today, I look back at some photographs and I'm re-editing images that I shot and edited 10 years ago, because I'm now embarrassed they look so edited. And it is just practice, and it is using the right techniques, but it can all be taught.
And that's what we teach on the editing side of things, but also trying to get that shot in the first place so that maybe you don't have to edit any more than 30 seconds, because you want to be out there enjoying it.
I read an article by you probably about 6 or 7 years ago.
Who are you pointing at? You.
Not you. I would never dream of pointing.
I didn't write an article.
No pointing. I read an article by you about 7 years ago where you were recommending some particular editing software. Has that changed a lot over the years, or?
6 or 7 years ago. I mean, I remember. I think what I was recommending back there was an editing platform by a company called Skylum. It may have been called Mac Fun, and then they changed the name to Skylum because basically they got into Windows and Mac. I use Photoshop and Lightroom every single day. Fantastic programs, but these are the granddaddies. They are professional editing platforms. They're also not cheap,
and they're also not easy to start to use. Sometimes I think you need a degree.
They are very easy programs to use, but initially they are overwhelming. Basically, I was working with Skylum at the time. Hello, Kevin LaRue, if you're listening to this. We produced some educational videos and did a whole bunch of stuff. But one of the wonderful things about Skylum's current software, which is called Luminar AI, horrible plug. No, I'm not working for them. There's no commission. Is that the tools themselves are a lot more intuitive. So, for example, let's say you've got a photograph and, I don't know, a quarter of the shot is sky, 3/4 of the shot is your bike on a hill or a desert or something. Because only a quarter of it is sky and you had your camera on auto, the camera has decided that the level of brightness needs to be this to make sure that your bike and the majority of the shot looks nice. And the top sky is blown out. It's white. It has almost no detail. You can deal with that inside Lightroom and Photoshop, but there'll be some layers and a bunch of tools, and you've got to learn what those tools are, in fact, what the names are, before you can even use the tools. Whereas if you had a piece of software that you opened it and it said top and bottom lighting, that tool is pretty self-explanatory. And then you have a slider, and how much you move that slider will alter how much the brighter or the darker part needs adjusting. But the program itself, it's artificial intelligence. It'll actually work out that, yeah, that sky is really too bright. There's no detail there. So moving the slider will actually adjust the sky's brightness enough to bring in back some of that story, some of that color and detail.
But won't affect the main body, which is the bike on the hill.
Anyone can do that. So it's a piece of software that, yeah, again, I use all of these tools every single day, but for people to get excited, or for people to understand that actually editing isn't a black art. Actually, anyone can do it. It's pretty simple. But having tools that are either intuitive or having instruction that says, look, you've got 1,000 tools here, forget trying to learn them all. Here's the 20 that you'll use the most. Here's the 20 that you're going to be getting out on a regular basis, going, oh, well, that wasn't that hard, and look what I've ended up with as a result.
It's trying to make taking photographs fun. It should be fun. Make you want to get your camera out or your iPhone out and enjoy and look back, and rather than go, oh my God, that was such a crap photograph, I don't know what I was doing. It doesn't really show what was there. That you're actually proud of it and go, yeah, this really does show where I was and the feeling that I had when I was there. And that's what we try to say. Every photograph has got to have a feel to it. It's got to make you go, oh, I remember when I was there. It was freezing cold. Yeah, it looks really cold.
You've got pictures and you've got photographs. A picture is just a flash moment in time. It's a bunch of zeros and ones. It's a digital image.
What was that?
I know, it's been a long day. A photograph should tell a story. A photograph should bring the viewer in. If you're getting at your iPhone or you're getting at your camera, it's because you've seen something that's made you feel a particular way. You've seen something that you want to share, whether it's a great sunset, whether it's a Maasai warrior, whether it's your mate going down the M5 on the back wheel. Photographs aren't about sharing what you saw. What you want to share with them is how something made you feel. That's intrinsically why we take photographs.
Yeah. Clive, I hope you're listening to this, because Clive is a dreadful photographer.
I have limited interest in taking photographs, but I do enjoy photography. I've actually got quite a lot of photography books from in the olden days when they used to be used to get pictures in books. I can't read, basically, that's what it is. But what I was thinking was, you need to tell us how we book onto these courses, and I want to come to one of the ones at Moto Junkies, and can we drink beer together and hear more stories?
Of course.
Well,
that's part of it too.
Bearing in mind, the only courses we put together are the ones we want to attend. I mean, you've got to have fun. So basically, the easiest thing to do is go online to livinglens.photography. We've just posted a bunch of reviews yesterday. We have not had anyone post anything other than a 5-star review on Google and Facebook.
And we've not paid them.
All of the weekend retreats are over at Motor Junkies in Wales. So basically, you got a 2 or 3 course evening meal with wine every night. The bottom line is you want to have fun. I don't want to just go and learn stuff or go and teach stuff.
We go out to some beautiful areas. We've chosen the areas with care because we know that you're not on a hiking weekend, you're on a photographic weekend. So, you go on out and we choose these areas so you don't have to hike miles to reach them. And luckily we're in Snowdonia, so it's beautiful. You have enough time to relax and enjoy and chat. And so we chat about our travels, and we have a mixture of people. But we also
teach in the way that we found useful to learn. When I look at some of the biggest lessons I've learned, it's always been, for example, I was in Yosemite. We had a Nikon camera. I didn't really know how to use it, and we were photographing, and I was stood next to somebody, and his photographs were better. And I said, "Why are yours so much better?" And so he just showed me what the settings were. So when we teach, we've got a small group. You're photographing with us. We're comparing. We're identifying what they're doing, which tools to use. There's no point teaching somebody, well, these are the 20 tools not to use on this occasion. Just teach them the ones to use.
We don't go above 12 people. That's our maximum. We want everybody to have enough time with us so that we can spend enough one-to-one time with people, and not fight for the the attention and then go, oh, well, I wanted to ask a question and I couldn't. No, we want to spend time with people.
And then we head back to the lodges, and basically we pull all the cameras off the cameras, and we critique them, and we have a look at them, and we compare notes. We look at what could be done differently and why some work and why some don't. I regularly will be looking at a student's photograph, and I'll be thinking, that is absolutely fantastic. Why didn't they were 3 feet away? I didn't see that. And I regularly think their photographs are absolutely better than mine or brilliant. But living lens dot photography, that's our current focus, and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
And also on Instagram, you are To Ride the World. Now, we have the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast Awards coming up that we're presenting at the Lightweight Adventures Festival in July. And one of those categories is for Instagram accounts. So if you are listening to this, make sure you do look at To Ride the World's Instagram account and maybe think about voting in the awards this year. And the link to those awards are on our Instagram page.
That'd be cool.
But my amazing Instagram account.
You could also look at Noel's stuff as well and then vote for Simon and Lisa.
No, it's just because right now he likes us more.
Yeah.
But the novelty factor will wear off, and he'll be your best friend again soon. And you can hold hands and skip down the road.
That's never happened.
My biggest problem is that I have this camera.
What is it?
It's a Canon 5D Mark II.
That's an awesome camera.
It's an awesome camera, and I have this phone. And whenever I get on a motorbike, I always kind of go, yeah, I think I'll take the phone.
Yeah.
Find it really hard to make myself take this massive camera.
See, why don't you take both? The iPhone goes in your jacket, and take one lens and that camera, stick it in a Krieger waist bag around your back.
Yeah.
That's it.
Simon, I've taken a big camera around Europe so many times, and I come back, and all I've done is taken pictures with this because it was just too inconvenient to dig this out.
The iPhone is great and very, very convenient, but having what I call a real camera with you as well, I would say is essential. Have a combo of two. Now I carry the iPhone with me. And why would you say, Simon, take a bigger camera as well? The difference in the photographs between the iPhone and...
At the end of the day, I've had a lot of people say, yeah, but the iPhone takes great photographs. Smartphones? Because they do. They've all got 24 to 36 megapixels. You can print them really big. But you have to remember, no matter how cool your smartphone is, it is just a tool. Just like your big Canon or your Nikons or your Fujis, they're just tools. You just have to choose the right tool for the right job.
It's all about the optics, isn't it? It's all about the glass.
Yeah. It's just the right tool for the job at the right time. There are other times when, leave your big camera, don't touch it, just use the iPhone. Because, And again, the reality is the techniques and the way you think about capturing images isn't that different. We've had people come on our courses reluctantly saying, well, I've only got an iPhone. Come with an iPhone. What we're going to teach you is applicable. Your iPhone has more photographic power than the camera we started with when we set out, and we still sell photographs from that camera to magazines with stories.
That's possibly a good...
Is it time for my weird last question?
So basically I wrap it up because I know I've got to edit this at some point, and then Noel doesn't pick up. He's like, there must be some level of being on the spectrum there. He doesn't pick up any verbal or visual clues, and he just carries on asking questions.
What it is really...
Is he on the ninja spectrum?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
All in black.
Yeah.
It's a question that I perhaps thought of earlier, but it just didn't fit in. But I kind of hung on to it because I did want to genuinely know the answer to it. And the question is, are your bikes properly decommissioned in America, or is somebody riding down to the shops on them every day?
Such a boring fucking question. What oil and tyres do you use?
Well, just when you say your bikes are there and on a completely different continent, what are they just gathering dust in?
So our original bikes are at Bob's BMW inside a beautiful BMW museum. They're still ours. We own them. But go and see them. They're at Bob's BMW.
That's in Maryland.
In Maryland, USA. But the new bikes, well, the new to us, 2015s, the 1200 and the 800, we left them with a very good friend of ours up a mountain in Tennessee. We haven't drained them. We haven't winterized them.
To be away 8 weeks,
and they've now been sat there for 3 years. So there's a very good chance that the fuel needs to come out. Well, you say, it'll be a pain, but the bottom line is, when we go back there, even if they did start, it would make sense to change the brake fluid, swap out the oil, put in new fuel.
We need
any crap that's built up, clear out.
Do a bit of work on them. I think at the moment, I think my battery's dead as well.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out getting a new battery in.
It's fun just to charge the batteries, though, wouldn't it? And just press the starter and see what happens.
Or maybe a little bit dangerous with the old fuel.
When you press the starter, you want that bike to be running for 15 to 20 minutes to get up to the proper temperature. The worst thing you could do is, run it for 30 seconds to a minute and then just turn it off.
We understand that we've got some work to do on them when we get back. And no, nothing was prepped because we weren't prepped. That's why we turned up with just hand luggage and a camera. I wasn't even going to bring my camera back. I said to Simon, well, you've got a camera, we'd share the camera. It's only going to be a few weeks. Maybe I won't. And then right at the last minute, I'm like, I'll bring my camera back. Thank God I did, because I had all my lovely lenses. I like a lot of macro shots. And so I had all my lovely macro stuff there. And I'm so pleased that I made that decision. It was just not a plan. And so they're sitting up there, and hopefully our friend has taken them out. But he's up a mountain in Tennessee, and the weather does get a bit bad. So over the winter time, they won't.
And again, David, our buddy, he's got a busy life. He's doing things. So again, you know what? Life just gets in the way. When you've got all that responsibility, everything going on, I know David's been on my bike a few times. They're busy people. So we're just really grateful that they've still got our bikes.
Yeah.
And they're still taking care of them, and they're under wraps.
I think you threatened to sell yours.
But then don't forget, it's not just the bikes. Helmets, riding suits, riding gear, boots, tent pegs,
wonderful sleeping bags that we've got.
It's all just sat there. We have no idea if it's being eaten by rats.
It is.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But you know what? It'll be what it'll be. And when we get back there, whatever we do to have to make it right, we'll just get on and do, because that's what you do.
There's a very happy raccoon family living in that -10 sleeping bag.
I guess the last question sensibly needs to be, so what is the plan going forward? And obviously you've probably done your 120 countries now. You're going to do them all again?
Nope, we haven't. We've done 80 so far, and of course we zipped through parts of Europe. And
what have we been doing with our time?
We've visited all of Europe before, but not on these motorcycles. So our aim was to always return back over to Africa, and then come back on up on the east side and head over into Eastern Europe and then Western Europe.
We lost our hearts to Africa.
So a lot of the countries are European countries that we had planned, and obviously some on the east side of Africa. The intention would still be to
get back to Africa.
Get back to Africa.
Bearing in mind that
things have changed dramatically.
Well, also we've changed. We got to Africa. We were absolutely green. I mean, we didn't have the riding skills we have today. We didn't have the photographic skills. We didn't have the photographic hunger. We didn't have the photographic gear. So to go back there with not only the equipment, but with the experience we have 500,000 miles later, and to try and experience Africa again. Africa for us was fantastic, but it was also minute to minute, it was overwhelming. And I think to go back and see Africa with older eyes, perhaps wiser eyes, that would be a privilege that we're working hard to make happen.
I think, however, that when we first started out, the world seemed to be a lot more open. Countries have turned inwards recently, and how that's affecting travel at the moment. Sadly,
things do seem to be a lot more nationalistic, and although it's great to be proud of your country, that can also have negative connotations. There are certain positives about thinking about ourselves as a global community, and how we treat each other, and how we treat our friends, and how we treat strangers. And borders that have always been open are suddenly closed. So yeah, the world landscape and borders and traveling, I actually think today is harder than it was 20 years ago. But again, it's just part of the challenge, and you just you deal with what comes your way.
So a massive thank you to Simon and Lisa. I can't help thinking there's hundreds of more stories. We'll have to get them back on, or maybe go to that photography school in Wales. Simon and Lisa, thank you very much. We're really grateful. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did talking to them. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.